I hated my 11-year-old daughter last night. It sounds monstrous, but when that brass handle jiggled during the first closeness my husband and I shared in months, my jaw locked until my teeth ached. Is it selfish to prioritize marital intimacy over a child's anxiety when a parent is leaving for war? The deployment bag sat by the door like a black tombstone, stuffed with fatigues and paperwork, and the smell of industrial laundry soap that always clings to him after base. We were living separately due to military housing quirks that keep families apart until the very end. Last night was supposed to be ours. The house was quiet except for the compressor kicking on and the distant sound of a train whistle cutting through the humid air. I had locked the bedroom door, a small act of rebellion, a boundary drawn in wood and brass against the chaos. We began intimacy behind that locked door, desperate to feel something other than the impending weight of separation. His hands were rough from work, but gentle on my skin, tracing the line of my spine like he was memorizing a map. I closed my eyes and tried to block out the clock ticking on the nightstand. Every second was a resource we were burning through too fast. But then the handle jiggled. Not a polite knock. A sharp, demanding twist of the brass knob that signaled an intrusion was imminent. My husband froze. His body went rigid against mine, the warmth instantly replaced by muscles turned to wire. He whispered my name, but his voice had shifted from lover to angry soldier. He asked me if I had locked it properly. I told him yes, but the lock was old and the house was settled. The handle jiggled again, harder this time. We both knew who it was. Our 11-year-old daughter was standing on the other side of that wood. She has Oppositional Defiant Disorder, which means her brain interprets boundaries as challenges rather than safeguards. She does not understand timing. She does not understand urgency. She only understands that her father is leaving, and she needs to feel him before he disappears. My husband pulled away from me. The intimacy shifted from connection to urgency as he reached for his robe. He was angry about repeated nighttime interruptions, a pattern building for weeks. I could feel the heat rolling off him. He moved to the door, and I stayed in the bed, pulling the sheet up to my chin to cover the vulnerability I felt exposed. He opened the door just a crack. Her voice cracked when she spoke, small and trembling in the hallway light. She said she had a nightmare. We both knew it was a lie. She was seeking parental connection, and she was willing to burn down the house to get it. My husband's jaw tightened. He told her to go back to bed. She pushed against the door. This is the trait of her condition, the oppositional defiance that turns love into a wrestling match. I got out of bed. I could not let him yell at her. Not tonight. Not when he would be gone for an unknown duration tomorrow. I de-escalated husband. Reminds him daughter needs compassion before his departure. I put my hand on his arm and felt the muscle jump under my palm. I whispered that this was her way of saying goodbye too. He looked at me with eyes that were tired and hard. Then he softened. He opened the door fully and let her in. He gave daughter hugs and kisses, holding her tightly against his uniform shirt. She buried her face in his chest and smelled the starch and the soap. He told her he loved her. She told him she loved him too. But the spell was broken. The intimate mood ruined. Couple does not have sex. He tucked her in and came back to the room, but the energy was gone. The air felt heavy and still, like the room was holding its breath. He lay down beside me and turned his back to me. He said we should sleep. I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling. I felt a sob rise in my throat that I could not swallow back down. I was deprived of anticipated emotional coping mechanism from sexual intimacy. I needed that connection to build a reserve of strength for the months ahead. Without it, I felt hollowed out. I started to cry silently so he would not hear. The salt crusted in the corners of my mouth. I hated her in that moment. I hated that she could not wait. I hated that her need was louder than mine. But then something changed. The house goes silent except for my crying. Morning came too fast. I woke up to the sound of the front door closing. Husband has left for deployment. I walked into the hallway and saw the deployment bag was gone. I was alone, experiencing waves of sadness, feeling guilty about anger toward daughter while unable to control her emotions. I walked past her room and the door was open. She was still asleep, curled up in a ball with her stuffed animal. On the floor near her bed, I found the goodbye note she wrote crumpled on the floor. I smoothed it out with shaking hands. It said she was sorry for being bad. It said she just wanted to see him one more time. Understanding the interruption was a desperate bid for connection, not an act of war. I sat on the floor next to her bed and held the paper against my chest. The truth landed like a brick in my stomach. She was not trying to ruin my night. She was trying to survive her own heartbreak. I am lying alone in the dark, knowing the intimacy buffer is gone forever. The house feels too big now. The silence presses against my eardrums. I look at her sleeping face, and I feel the conflict tearing me apart. Is it morally acceptable for a parent to feel anger toward their child for interrupting a rare, intimate moment with a departing spouse, when the child is not at fault and acting from legitimate emotional need? I do not have the answer. I only have the quiet house and the crumpled note. I wiped my face and stood up. I had to make breakfast. I had to be the mother who stays. But the resentment sits heavy on my tongue. I wonder if he thinks about it too. I wonder if he feels guilty for getting angry. I wonder if we are both failing her by needing things she cannot give. The sun came up over the trees outside the window. It was a beautiful morning that felt like a betrayal. I walked to the kitchen and started the coffee. The machine gurgled and hissed. I poured the liquid into a mug and held it with both hands. The heat felt good against my palms. I looked down the hallway toward her room. I knew I would forgive her. I knew I would hug her when she woke up. But I also knew that a part of me would always remember the sound of that door handle jiggling. It is a sound that will haunt me until he comes home. I took a sip of the coffee, and it burned my tongue, but I didn't feel it. I am writing this to vent, not for advice. I just needed to say it out loud. I needed to admit that I am not a perfect mother. I am just a woman who wanted one last night with her husband before the war took him away. And my daughter wanted him too. And there was not enough of him to go around. That is the truth I have to live with today. That is the weight I carry while she sleeps. I hope she dreams of something sweet. I hope she does not know how close I came to breaking. I hope she never knows that I hated her for knocking on the door. But I did. And that is the hardest thing I have ever had to admit.
Hello, I'm Dr. Julian Reed. What you are experiencing is not merely frustration. It is a specific form of grief compounded by physiological abandonment. We call this pattern attachment panic displacement. Your daughter is not your enemy. She is a mirror reflecting the chaos of a military household. When a parent deploys, the remaining structure shifts tectonically. An 11-year-old with oppositional defiant disorder does not see a locked door. She sees a vault closing before she is safe inside. Her intrusion was not malice. It was a desperate bid for reassurance that the ground beneath her feet will not vanish when he leaves. Children with behavioral disorders often lack the vocabulary for fear. They act out the terror they cannot speak. She felt him slipping away and tried to stop time by breaking the boundary that separated her from him. However, I will not dismiss your sorrow. You are allowed to mourn the loss of that connection. Intimacy is not just pleasure. For spouses of service members, it is a vital anchor. It is the memory you store in your body to survive the silence of the coming months. When that moment was shattered, you lost more than sex. You lost your buffer against the loneliness waiting for you this morning. You were denied the chemical regulation you required to face the empty side of the bed. The sudden cessation of anticipation creates a vacuum. That vacuum is now filled with cortisol and grief. The tragedy here is that both needs were legitimate. His need for release, your need for connection, her need for security. They collided in a hallway outside a bedroom door. You de-escalated the situation with remarkable grace, reminding your husband that compassion was required. Yet you were left alone with the wreckage. He got to be the hero who hugged her. You got to be the container for everyone's pain, while your own cup remained empty. This asymmetry is where the bitterness takes root. You protected them both, but who protected you from the interruption? It is darkly ironic that the child who needs you most is the one who deprived you of the strength to care for her. You feel resentment. Do not shame yourself for it. Resentment is the shadow of love when boundaries are breached. You are grieving the partner who is gone, while caring for the child who remains. That is a heavy burden for one night. The ODD diagnosis complicates this because it suggests a pattern of defiance. Yet in this instance, it was likely pure anxiety manifesting as obstruction. You are left holding the bag of everyone's emotional regulation, while yours spills onto the floor. We must ask ourselves where the morality lies in this exhaustion. Is it wrong to wish for a single night where your needs are not secondary to the trauma of others? Or is the very act of prioritizing your own emotional survival a betrayal of the child who knows only that her father is leaving? Tell me, when the house is quiet and the bed is cold, do you forgive her for needing you too much? Or do you hate her for it?